Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to walk you through an incoming astronomical marvel that is, frankly, going to be historic. If you have even a passing interest in the cosmos, you are going to want to circle August 12th, 2026 on your calendar in permanent bright red marker. We're looking at a day that the universe has pretty much perfectly scheduled just for us.
You might be asking yourself, just how much astronomical goodness can you really pack into a single 12-hour window? Well, the answer is an unprecedented amount. Seriously, we're looking at a shockingly rare celestial doubleheader here. Not only do we get the absolute only total solar eclipse of the entire year, but it perfectly coincides with the maximum activity of the famous Perseids meteor shower. And to make it utterly perfect, it all happens under a dark new moon, which creates literally the ultimate viewing conditions.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a rare celestial doubleheader, then move to the partial eclipse view. After that, we're chasing the solar shadow, looking at weather, hazards, and planning, and finally, I'll leave you with some essential pro tips for totality.
All right, part one, a rare celestial doubleheader.
This event highlights a massive milestone because it's going to be mainland Europe's very first total eclipse of the sun since 1999. Think about that for a second. Most of the time, we get used to major celestial events being scattered apart by months, if not years. You usually have to wait a lifetime for something like this to happen in your backyard. But here, the universe is delivering a historic total solar eclipse and a spectacular major meteor shower all on the exact same day.
Moving on to section 2, the partial eclipse view.
Now, what's really interesting here is that only a tiny fraction of humanity will actually get to stand directly under the shadow of totality. But millions more, they're still going to get a magnificent show. Just look at the dramatic contrast in what observers across North America are actually going to see. The eclipse kicks off around 1 p.m. on the East Coast, and you can clearly see how much your location matters. Up in Fairbanks, Alaska, they're looking at nearly 37% obscuration. In the contiguous U.S., the northern tip of Maine will see about 29%. Quebec City gets a very respectable 24%, and Boston sees 16%. But as you move south and west, the numbers just absolutely plummet. By the time you hit Chicago, it's a barely perceptible 0.1%.
But contrast that North American data directly with Europe. The partial eclipse practically dominates the continent. Dublin is looking at an incredible 94% obscuration, Paris is at 92.1%, and Venice is right there at 91.2%. So even if you can't make it into that narrow strip of total darkness, millions of people in these historic cities are going to experience a deeply dramatic, highly noticeable dimming of the daytime sky.
Okay, section 3, chasing the solar shadow.
Let's see how this builds because the moon's dark shadow, known as the umbra, is going on a truly wild 2,100 mile per hour journey across the globe. It actually touches down at sunrise in remote northern Siberia, skims within 60 miles of the North Pole, and sweeps right over eastern Greenland. It hits Reykjavik, Iceland at 5:48 p.m. local time for a crisp 60 seconds of totality. Then it speeds down to make landfall in northwestern Spain at A Coruña at 8:28 p.m. before sending its final kiss as it sinks into the Mediterranean Sea at sunset.
And when that shadow hits, look at what else joins the party in the sky. Totality literally brings the stars out in the daytime. You'll be able to spot Venus shining brilliantly at a negative 4.4 magnitude. Jupiter and Mercury are going to be clearly visible too, along with the bright star Regulus. But keep in mind, your perspective of this planetary lineup completely shifts depending on where you are. From Iceland, Venus is way out to the east of the sun. But from Spain, that entire sun-planet line will appear tilted clockwise, with Jupiter dipping much closer to the horizon. And speaking of Spain, observers on the East Coast and the Balearic Islands are in for something incredibly special. Because the eclipse happens so late in the day there, they're going to experience a totally unique sunset eclipse. The eclipsed sun will hover just a few degrees above the horizon. Atmospheric refraction will actually distort its outline, redden that ethereal corona, and throw dramatic crepuscular rays across the sky. It is going to be a massively photogenic event, for sure. Let's shift gears to section 4. Weather, hazards, and planning. The physical environments of our two prime viewing locations honestly could not be more different. If you're planning to chase the shadow in Iceland, you're looking at daytime highs in the upper 50s Fahrenheit, so about 14 degrees Celsius. It's going to be crisp and cool. But if you're heading to Spain or Portugal, be warned. Europe is currently experiencing severe heat waves in August. You absolutely must keep water handy and bring an umbrella. Not for rain, obviously, but for essential sun protection while you wait. And this brilliantly illustrates the statistical gamble of eclipse chasing. Based on ground observation data compiled over 2 decades by meteorologist Jay Anderson, just look at the stark difference in historical sunshine probability for mid-August. Spain and the Balearic Islands offer a highly reassuring 70% chance of clear skies. Meanwhile, eastern Greenland is at 40%, and Reykjavik is hovering down at 32%. So, statistically speaking, Spain is the undisputed favorite for actually seeing the event.
However, we have to look at the reality on the ground. Despite Spain's excellent 70% sunshine probability, there is a crucial caveat here, and that's wildfires. During the hot, dry summers, Spain often battles dozens of major active wildfires. So even if there isn't a cloud in the sky, thick smoke from these fires could easily drift over the viewing areas and obscure the eclipsed sun entirely. It's a pretty stark reminder that when dealing with nature, well, nothing is ever 100% guaranteed.
Moving into our final phase, Section 5, Pro Tips for Totality.
Totality is incredibly brief. In most places for this 2026 eclipse, it'll be under 2 minutes. Careful planning is a must if you want to both photograph and observe it. The absolute best strategy? Automate your camera. Set an intervalometer to run a series of short to long exposures, and then just repeat them in reverse. Once you hit start, physically walk away from the camera and look up. The author of our source material plans to dedicate just 20 seconds to their camera and spend the rest of the time going totally gaga over the live view. Seriously, don't miss the eclipse because you were staring at a screen.
Plus, there is so much to see before the main event. Pay attention to the pre-totality phenomena. During the partial phases, cross your hands to make a waffle pattern. The tiny gaps between your fingers will act as pinhole cameras, projecting hundreds of tiny crescent suns onto the ground. About a half hour before totality, you'll feel the temperature suddenly drop. The daylight will take on a strange, eerie, kind of diluted quality. You might even see bizarre shadow bands rippling across the ground. And finally, the suddenness of the moon's shadow zooming in at over 2,400 miles per hour will literally make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So the crucial point here is that this is not just a scientific event. It is a profoundly, overwhelmingly human one. Anticipation, amazement, fear, wonder, exhilaration, peace, connection, and relief. These are the actual emotions observers report feeling when the sun disappears. It's a sensory climax that hits you right in the chest. It's exactly why eclipse chasers travel to the ends of the earth again and again, just for a single minute of darkness. But as the shadow lifts, daylight returns, and the eclipse concludes, we have to ask ourselves, what about those Perseids? Remember, this is a 12-hour doubleheader. The eclipse might have stolen the daytime show, but what happens when night finally falls, the new moon sets, and the sky fills with the peak of the year's greatest meteor shower? Well, you'll just have to keep your eyes on the skies to find out. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and clear skies to you all.